You, me, and HIFMB. Stories of Science and the Sea.
Hello everybody and welcome to the next episode of the HIFMB podcast. In this episode I talked to Kimberley Peters, our professor for marine governance, the newly acclaimed leader of the new governance group, and also the voice of our intro jingle. So we talked about publishing books versus papers, what are the differences, what's the merits of each. We discussed academic systems of Germany versus England, and we also discussed failure in academia, which is a huge part of this conversation and very valuable. So listen in, enjoy, and I give you Kimberley Peters. Welcome to our next episode of the HIFMB podcast and to our next guest, Kimberley Peters.
Hi, Jan.
Hi. Yeah, excellent. I'm great. Very happy to have you here.
Yeah, really happy to be here.
So you're a professor at HIFMB, a professor of marine governance.
Yeah, I'm one of what's called the 4 core professors. So we have 4 core working groups that were part of our new institute. Mm-hmm. So one was in biodiversity theory, another one in data, another one in marine conservation, and another one in governance. So they're the kind of what are called the kind of core groups.
The 4 pillars.
Yeah. And then we also have working groups as well. And we have other professors such as our very esteemed institute director. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so I'm one of those 4 under those 4 pillars.
Sweet. Excellent. And you when did you get here?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. Amidst a pandemic when time
yes.
changes. 2020.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Same as me. Joined in the middle of the year.
Yeah.
Okay. So for this podcast, we're going to focus on one of your newest pieces, the Routledge Handbook of Ocean Space. And so what is it? And first of all, what is Routledge?
So Routledge is a publisher,
Okay.
and they belong to a larger publishing company called Taylor & Francis.
Mm-hmm.
So there are obviously, as we know, as academics, there are lots and lots of different publishing houses.
Yes.
I won't mention them all to give them all different airtime.
Yeah.
But Routledge are a keen publisher, particularly of social sciences and humanities.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a series of what are called handbooks. And these are effectively companions to a given subject or topic. Mm-hmm. So a few years ago, myself and some colleagues were approached to put together a handbook or a companion to ocean space, to the oceans, mm-hmm. Particularly through that social science and humanities lens. So that's what this book is. It's a handbook, it's a companion, it's a book that brings together a whole host of chapters that provide different cuts into or lenses mm-hmm. to look at oceans through.
Okay. And I'm not quite versed in the book business. Who approaches you with these things?
So I've published a couple of books already mm-hmm. With the same publisher.
All right.
So they knew what I was interested in, the things that I write about, mm-hmm. And they were sort of thinking, it would be nice to have a companion. It would be nice to have a handbook on this particular topic. Mm-hmm. And it was actually my colleague who was approached first. So Professor John Anderson, who's mm-hmm. one of the other editors there. Yep. So he's a really quite famous, I would say, cultural geographer mm-hmm. Based at Cardiff University. And he was approached first. He does cultural studies of the ocean, particularly related to surfing spaces. Mm-hmm. And he was approached first. And then because we'd previously written a book together called Waterworld's Human Geographies of the Ocean, mm-hmm. came out in 2014, okay. He said, "Oh, Kim, do you want to come on board?" Pun intended, with this. And I said, yes, that would be great. And then we said, a handbook's a lot of work because it's big, it's a handbook. It wants to think about the ocean from lots of different, as I said, angles and perspectives. Mm-hmm. And so we said, should we have some extra editors too?
Okay.
So
who's on it?
So it's myself, John Anderson, Philip Steinberg, and Andrew Davies.
Sweet. Okay. And they're all in the social realm, or?
Indeed, yes. Okay. So John comes from a cultural perspective, as I mentioned. As you said, he's a cultural geographer. Phil Steinberg is also, I would say, famous.
Okay.
He's pretty famous, I would say. And he is he's interested in politics, mm-hmm. Particularly geopolitics. He does a lot of work on the Arctic. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a great book that actually sort of marked a lot of social science interventions into the ocean. Mm-hmm. And that came out in 2001. So he's a kind of key figure for social scientists when they turn to ocean studies. Yeah, and then Andrew Davies is a historical, he does his historical work, and some of his previous work has been on the Royal Indian Navy, and thinking about linkages between colonialism and the sea. So we've got a broad range of people involved here. Me potentially from a more environmental governance perspective, John from the cultural perspective, Phil from the political perspective, and Andy from the historical perspective.
Yes,
and then you have a team that build the companion.
Yeah,
and there it is.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I read through the table of contents, and there's like it seems it covers a lot. It covers diving, it covers navies, like you just mentioned, and then swimming, depth, islands, everything. So it's basically your perspectives, you four perspectives on these individual topics, or on these.
When we actually started the book, what we asked ourselves were, what are the different ways in which the ocean can be thought about or approached? And we started with a set of titles that were the social, the cultural, the historical, the economic.
Yeah.
And then we put a call out, we approached people to write chapters. And when we started to get chapters in, we didn't like the way the book was split up.
Oh, right.
We thought it was very unnatural.
Yeah.
Because the political is not separate from the economic.
The
The economic is not always separate from the historical. You know, you think about something like trade routes around the oceans, and they've been existing for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So we took a look at the book again, and we rearranged it into kind of new sections. So it's got sections on environments and worlds. It's got sections on labour and power. And so, yeah, it's sort of split up somewhat differently now. I hope it's not a book that's a reflection of us, but a book that's a reflection of the marine social sciences as they are.
Of oceans as a space, basically.
Yeah.
If I look at it, it covers 32 topics and is a super interesting reflection of the oceans as a space. But you've written a lot of books, I saw in your CV. Do you enjoy it? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think books have an interesting place in the social sciences and humanities anyway, particularly in the humanities. There's a couple of reasons for writing books, and there's a couple of reasons for writing papers. I mean, whenever you publish anything, I think as an academic, you're always thinking about who your audience is and who you want to reach. At the same time, you're thinking about what you want to say. And so there are some arguments that you can only make. There are some points that you can only develop through an extended piece of work. And that's what a book enables you to do. It enables you to do something that you can't do in a 6 to 7, 7 to 8, 10 to 12,000 word paper. It enables you to have an extended discussion on a topic. What an edited book enables you to do is what the Handbook does, which is collate a set of debates together. Now, you could argue you could do that in a special issue, but you would rarely have a special issue that has 32 papers in it. So books enable you to do, it's just a different type of outlet. It is more common, as I mentioned, in the humanities, where sometimes you are developing a longer argument that requires you to piece together research in a slightly different way than you would in perhaps the natural sciences. But I think, you know, it's interesting. I have natural science colleagues who've written books and they really enjoy it. And likewise, you know, I like and enjoy writing papers. So I wouldn't say I have a preference of books over papers. It's always about what's the best outlet for what I'm trying to do or what I want to say in the audience that I want to reach. The other thing with books are, you know, I mean, lots of people say, well, books aren't as good because they're not as accessible, because perhaps they cost a lot of money versus papers. True and not true, because there's so many paywalls on journals now. And if you don't have institutional access, sometimes if you do have access, your institution might not subscribe to every journal. So some of the financial implications around books versus journals, they're quite complicated. And it's not simply a case that, well, books are more expensive, so we shouldn't publish there, because journals also have the same, have some of the same issues. So for me, it's always about what is it you want to achieve? How do you want to develop an argument? And is a book the best forum, or is a paper the best forum?
So, and with a book versus a paper, what are the cost differences? Like for like when we as scientists publish papers, we have to, like if you want to make it open access, you have to pay the open access fees. What are the costs involved in book writing?
Yeah, so you can have now increasingly. So a couple of interesting things there. Actually, that question, Jan, very interesting. So oftentimes with a book like this one, so an edited book that has lots of different chapters in it by different authors, you can actually access it a bit like you would access a paper. So because lots of books are also digital now.
Yeah.
So if, for example, your institution subscribes to all journals by a particular publisher that will go unnamed, they will also allow you to have access to their book chapters. So,
all right, easy.
Yeah.
Same.
So same process. You can also purchase individual chapters as well as an entire book. And you can pay to make your book open access as well. Otherwise, books as well, particularly a book like this, would be predominantly aimed at a library market.
Yeah.
So this would be something like a handbook, a companion. It sits in a library, and students and other people could pick it up as a first, excuse the pun, port of call for ocean-related topics.
With my very limited experience in this, if I were to decide whether I want to write a paper versus a book, most of the knowledge I would want to put down is quite up to date and quite time constricted. Like how do you make the call on what is book worthy? Like knowledge that you think is gonna be like this for a while, so it warrants being in the library, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. One of the reasons that sometimes people don't pick books is that book publishing can be a bit longer than paper publishing. So you submit a paper and it goes through rounds of reviews, and then the paper comes out and it's there and your science is there immediately. Books can be a slightly longer process because the book, once you've written the book then, depending on the publisher, has to go out for a review again. They've reviewed it at a proposal stage. So normally when you want to write a book, you either approach a publisher or a publisher approaches you, and then you would write a book proposal, and that sets out what the book looks like. At that point, the proposal and oftentimes a couple of chapters from the book will go under review, and they'll be reviewed like a paper would be reviewed.
How many reviews do you have?
Oh, God, it can depend. When I wrote my textbook, that had 12 reviewers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
right.
Because, of course, it was for a discipline-wide book. So they needed to make sure that it would appeal to the discipline.
Yeah.
And then, so then you have to respond to the reviewer comments, and then you write the book, and then the book gets reviewed again. And then you effectively, the book goes off to production, and depending on the size of the book, that can take quite some time. So my textbook was about 9 months. It was in production for.
How long is it?
The book, it's about 180,000 words.
Okay.
So.
Oh, how many pages is that? That's
about 300 pages.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So just because of the way it gets copy set in particular ways, but the thing to do, and obviously you have to decide on the cover, and there might be a marketing strategy and that kind of thing. But more often than not, actually book publishing is much quicker now than it used to be. So I think there used to be this myth that, you don't want to put your best science in a book because books are slow. Books take a long time to come out. But I don't think that's true anymore. I think books are much faster than they used to be because of, as I mentioned, digital formats now, the fact you can download chapters online. So books are they are a sort of a different kettle of fish now. How many puns do you think I can fit in?
11, I think.
Okay, I'll try.
Yeah.
Sorry, how many have we had so far? 2 or 3, maybe?
I think 3. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll make a tally.
Okay. Where are we going next on our voyage?
Yeah. On the publishing date. So when will this? Is this out already?
It will come out in July 2022.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's got so it's in production at the moment. So so that's the sort of that lengthy bit of the production on a handbook's a bit longer because it's so big.
Yeah. So this is 32 chapters. How long is this in words?
Oh, wowzer. 300,000 maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So and in pages roughly?
Oh, I don't know because it's not typeset yet.
Right. Okay.
So.
Okay. Did you pick a cover?
It has got a cover. Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Yeah, it's a boat on a map. which is it's a handbook of ocean space.
Who made it? Or
we had to just pick a cover image, and you basically look for a set of cover images from. They give you a selection. We picked one.
Sweet.
So.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, moving on our marine voyage to your academic life.
Yes.
So you're a professor now here at HIFMB or at the uni?
Both.
Both.
Yeah, so I hold a post at the ICBM, which is the Institute for Chemistry and Biology of the Marine Environment at the university, and I have a second affiliation to the Institute of Social Sciences, and then I'm technically seconded to the Alfred Wegener Institute and sort of do my work here at the HIFMB.
Perfect. Good for us.
That was a smooth answer.
Yeah, it was super smooth. And so I think that the systems are a bit different in the UK and in Germany. When do you get to call yourself a professor in the UK?
Yeah, the systems are quite different. I would admit I'm still trying to fully understand the German system versus the UK system. In the UK system, the way that it tends to work is once you have a PhD, you can begin, if you choose to stay in an academic career, if the system allows you to stay in an academic career, because we know the challenges, and that's one thing that is really, 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 I think, important to discuss, is precarity, short-term contracts, the ways in which you find security in an academic career. So once you have completed a PhD, there are various pathways in the UK. You may seek a postdoctoral position where you're working either on your own research project or a research project that's funded by someone else, and you become the postdoc on that project. Or you might go down a teaching route where you take a teaching associate or a teaching fellow post. Some people will go straight into what's called a lectureship, and that might be temporary or it might be permanent. But in the UK, effectively, once you finish the PhD, you can, it's rare, but you can step straight into a permanent position as a lecturer. Okay. That can happen. And then once you have that lecturing role, there's then a number of steps, effectively. So in the UK system, you tend to go lecturer, senior lecturer, reader, professor. And at each step, you would apply for a promotion. And that whether or not you get that promotion depends on your status, so to speak.
Okay.
I did some inverted commas there, everyone who's listening. So your status in your given field that's set against a number of benchmarks. Again, we could talk about the politics of those benchmarks, about how academic work is valued, numbers of papers, grant monies that are brought in, and those things are these kinds of markers of your success as an academic, and they're in some ways deeply problematic because of the way that higher education and academia works, not just in the UK, but I think globally. But yeah, that's the system in the UK, is that you then work your way up and you apply to go to each different level based on your experience and based on your the things you have in your backpack, numbers of papers, numbers of grants, numbers of students you supervise, and so on. Yeah, and that's the way that the system tends to work. So and when you are a professor, one of the things, some people would say this isn't a correct thing to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. Why not? Technically, in the UK system, the job of a lecturer and a professor is exactly the same. You do research, teaching and administration, and you work your way up the ladder by becoming more experienced. Now, it is the case that when you're a professor, you'll have more responsibility than the lecturer may have. But even then, that's sometimes disputable in the UK system because, many lecturers' early careers have a lot of responsibility for their level of role.
Yeah, I bet.
And that's quite different to the German system, because a professor in the German system leads a research group. They have a research cluster. The organisation of academia is slightly different in the UK in that sense. That's not to say that professors don't have research groups, but they're less formalised than they are here.
Okay. And how does a senior lecturer compare to a lecturer in terms of responsibility? Yeah,
in terms of they say the jump between a lecturer and a senior lecturer is one of the hardest ones you can make. Okay. It was hard for me. I failed a couple of times before I got my senior lectureship.
Yeah, that's good to know.
So, and I think it's really important to talk about, and they're not failures. And I think it's really important to normalise that you don't make a smooth trajectory, and neither should it have to be a trajectory that we're all working our way somehow to the top.
Yes.
And so it's one of the biggest leaps to make, and it's when you transition between being someone who's come out of a PhD to being someone who has established the next big bit of research that they're doing. So, you know, you've got your PhD research, and then after you finish your PhD, you publish from that, you maybe start the next project. The senior lecturer role is almost when you're taking your research to the next step, defining your next big project,
Right.
And do so independently. And that's a big thing about, I think, the UK system is, at least, is it's very much based on leadership and independence.
Okay.
Which also cuts against the grain of the whole nature of collaboration and teamwork that's so valued. That's not to say you don't have to have those attributes, but so much of that promotion is based on you individually showing what you've done to make the difference and you being the leader in your field.
All right. Seems intense.
Yeah, but I think it's intense. I wouldn't say it's less intense than any other system. Yeah. I think, you know, when you look at the academic systems in places like Australia, which is really competitive.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think Germany is really competitive because there isn't that middle space in Germany where you can as easily where you can get a permanent lectureship where you can effectively be fairly junior in your career and have a permanent job. Yeah. There isn't much space for that. So yeah, it's hard in all systems.
Yeah. Do you have tenure track? Is tenure track professorships, is that a American thing or a UK thing?
That's in the US.
The US, okay.
In the UK, we tend to have a thing called probation.
Right.
So when you're a lecturer, if you're mainly, they'll set you a set of goals again against a number of benchmarks. And you have to, meet them. Lots of places will say the probation is always achievable. So you wouldn't get hired unless you would be able to meet that probation. But of course, sometimes people don't meet that probation, or the goalposts get changed. And oftentimes not because it's the fault of the individual concerned. It could be because they've had extra responsibility or extra pressures. So yeah, I mean, I think increasingly it's really, really important to talk about the academic system or academic systems and how they function, and how to support people who want to make a career for themselves in this, because ultimately academia is only as good as the people who are in it.
Okay. And like you mentioned, the jump from PhD straight to teaching, right? To a teaching position? Yeah.
So do you want to hear the failure story, or do you want to hear the? Yeah. So no, I couldn't find a job at all for a year after my PhD. Okay. So I worked in a bike shop in London on Great Portland Street. Yeah. I learned to change a puncher really quickly.
Nice. How fast can you do it?
Well, when I was working there, in about a minute.
Really? Oh,
yeah,
God, no. That's incredible.
Really quick. Yeah. I couldn't do it that fast now. I'm a bit like, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But yeah, I couldn't. I mean, I was working in the bike shop at the end of my PhD anyway, sort of funding the end bit of my PhD. And then, I tried to find an academic job, and I applied for academic jobs. I didn't even get a reply. Didn't get shortlisted, didn't get a letter, and that was for a year. Then I moved back in with my mother. I said that in a way that was, I love my mum. I moved back in with my mum. And then it got to one point where I just said, I don't think this is going to happen for me. And I got a job I did my first degree in town planning, and I got a job as a planner. Oh, right. Working for the National Health Service, for the NHS in the UK.
In London?
As a transport planner in Slough. Which is just outside of London.
Right, okay.
It's a town just outside of London. Yeah, so I did travel planning for 6 months. And then I was still applying for academic jobs. And then eventually I got my first academic job, which was a 5-month contract. So I moved across the country for a 5-month teaching contract.
Was that to Sheffield?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right. Yeah.
And so, again, I think it's harder now. I think it's useful to say that you go through these journeys, but I also think, I also am quite reluctant telling that story, because I think that I don't want to sound like I understand the challenges that current early career staff are going through, because I think it's harder now. In the social sciences and humanities, it's really tough. And I wouldn't claim that my experience, I would say my experience now is probably at the better end of the spectrum of what some people are going through. So I ended up on a teaching only contract.
For 5 months.
Yeah, for 5 months. And then I was quite lucky, however you want to describe lucky, because it just kept getting extended. So it got extended for another 5 months. And,
I see.
but it was a tricky time because I had a 5-month contract, but the shortest you can get a house contract for in the UK is 6 months.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I was like, oh no, what am I going to do? Like, am I going to be able to pay my rent? And how's that going to work? And and also, I'm a real southerner. And I was like, I have never been north of the M25. That's a motorway. And I was like, oh God. Yeah.
Are you from London?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born in London, opposite the Houses of Parliament.
Oh, wow.
I'll share that with our listeners this afternoon. So yeah, I was, yeah. Yeah, so about as central as you can get.
Yeah, wonderful. And then, so growing up in London, then where did you do your bachelor's and master's?
Cardiff, and I went to Cardiff University and I did a planning degree. And so town planning.
So that was the bachelor?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, right.
And then I did a master's degree in geography and then a PhD in geography.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And the PhD was in London again?
Yeah, back to London. So over to Wales, over the border to Wales, and then back to England.
Wales. And it took you back to Wales though at one point?
Yeah.
As a lecturer after Sheffield?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was great actually. So I was really fortunate again to get that job. I think again it's really difficult because I do think there is an element of luck. There's an element of being in the right place at the right time. I think I don't want to belittle the talent of scientists. There's so many great people out there, but I also think there is an element of luck
of course.
that you're there when the opportunity is there. And then there's great people who just at the time they come out of their PhD, it might be that there's just no jobs, there's nothing advertised. Yeah. And then really great people get lost from the system because of that dimension of it, that unpredictability of, did someone get a project funded that needs a postdoc? No,
exactly.
So
I had the same when I came out of my master's, like looking for PhD projects, which weren't my thing, also applied for them, never got replies. And then like 6 months after that, the perfect position was announced and that was like fit like a glove. But you never know when that arises. Yeah. And so the job in Aberystwyth came up and honestly, I mean, I couldn't even say the name, it's right in the middle of West Wales, and it takes 4 hours on a train from Birmingham to get there. Oh, and really, that long?
Yeah, and it's a town of like 8,000 people, and I was born in London, and so which is sort of like 8 million people, and I have to say, I was a bit, so again, it's this tension between again being really fortunate that I was able to move. Some people, because of family commitments, caring responsibilities, can't move so freely for academic jobs and academic positions, and they're geographically fixed. Yeah. I was lucky I could move. There was a job there, and I applied, and I didn't get it. So there's a running theme. Yes. And actually someone else got the job. And then what happened was someone else left. And so they were like, oh, well, we'll make 2 hires. So I was a second choice candidate.
Oh, wonderful.
And then I got this call saying, oh, we would like to offer you the job as well. And I said, oh, okay. So, so I took the job. And it was a great move. All my reservations about living in a really small town in West Wales, it was just... It was fantastic because it was such a small place. The university was really agile and responsive, and the people were just amazing. Yeah, intellectually, it was incredible. Like I learned so much from the people who work there, and I'm still in touch with them and I still work with them now. Yeah, wonderful. So I've actually got a grant proposal in at the moment with one of my former colleagues there. Sweet. So you get those enduring ties. Academically, it was a fantastic fit. So so you can have reservations perhaps about what step your career will take and where you will move. And I had real reservations because I was like, oh goodness, I'm moving somewhere, I can't spell it. And actually it was a fantastic move, and sometimes taking those chances, if you're lucky enough again, and it's the right time and right place that you get that opportunity, even as a second choice, taking it's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. How far is, I lived with a guy from Wales, from Aberdare. How far is that from Aberystwyth? Oh, Aberdare. everything's a long way in Wales because
Yeah,
there's
okay.
there's only one motorway in Wales.
Yeah,
and it's in
right.
South Wales. So even the shortest distances take quite some time.
Yeah.
My guesstimate would be 3 hours.
Okay.
Everything is 3 hours in Wales.
But yeah, I definitely echo how how amazing the people are. He's a great guy. They make great people in Wales. Okay, and then so how long were you in Aberdare?
Aberystwyth.
Aberystwyth, sorry.
That's all right.
My bad.
I would like to go to Aberdare.
No, sorry.
So 4 years.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then to Liverpool,
And then to Liverpool, yeah.
which is not that far from Wales either.
Yeah, no. And also Liverpool has gets its water from Wales.
Oh, it does.
It does indeed, yeah. It's quite a sad story, actually. Would you like to hear it?
Oh, sad. Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So effectively, to supply water to particular areas of England, they actually flooded entire Welsh villages.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
Okay.
so people lost their homes, their historic homes, flooding and creating reservoirs.
When was this?
So this was in the early part of the 20th century.
Oh,
so
really?
you can actually go and visit some of these. So when I worked at Liverpool, we used to take our students on a North Wales field trip, and we would take them to the reservoirs, and there's under the water where villages used to be.
I had no idea.
So some of these kinds of relationships between England and Wales
Yeah.
are, we assume they might go right back to, the 1200s or, when there were great battles between the different nations of the United Kingdom. But actually, there's all kinds of complex political relationships between the different countries of the United Kingdom now.
I had no idea. That's so interesting. Yeah, when I lived there, you definitely felt it, like the North and South divide,
Yeah.
and the English Welsh divide, English Scottish. But yeah, I had no idea that's that recent. Wow.
Lovely water. Welsh water is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And then so Liverpool was also a lectureship, I think.
Yeah. So it was a sort of lateral move.
Yeah.
And that was mainly a personal move.
Okay.
So wanting to be closer to my partner. Another thing you have to take into account as you, go through, do we want to be commuting kind of 4 hours, which was what we were doing.
Yeah.
One of us lived in England, one of us lived in Wales.
Okay.
And then every 2 weeks I would come home to a house that we'd bought together. So I would go there every 2 weeks, spend the weekend there, and then go back to
Where was the house?
to a room that I rented in Wales. So Liverpool was a decision to it was sort of a personal decision, and again, it's sort of I say it was a personal decision, but it was also Liverpool made a lot of sense for me academically because it's a university in a big historic and also contemporary port city. So it made a lot of sense for me academically as well.
Yeah. Okay. And you were a lecturer there, and then a senior lecturer after that. So
Yeah.
you had to make that application process.
Yeah. That we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So
How many attempts did it take you, if I can ask?
2.
2, right?
2. Yeah. Third time lucky.
Oh, right. The third time. Yes. Okay. Right. Excellent. And you were in Liverpool how long?
5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Yeah. 4 years, 5 years, something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it took you to here,
Yeah.
to HIFMB.
Yeah.
So what drew you to
Well,
HIFMB?
I'll tell you a story then.
Okay.
I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you another story.
Okay, shoot.
Have we got time?
Yeah, we've got
Have
all
we
the
got time?
Yes.
Have the listeners got time?
We've got all the time in the world.
Have they got patience?
don't
So here's the story behind that. So basically, it must have been 2017, maybe 2018. I got an email. Got an email from a Professor Helmut Hillebrand.
Oh.
And it was an invitation to a symposium to launch a new institute. And the symposium was, I think it was held in June, maybe. Maybe it must have been in June. And I looked at it and I thought, that sounds like a nice event, but that's the end of the teaching term. I was also an admissions tutor in Liverpool, so that's a kind of busy job, administrative job. And I thought, I'm going to be really tired. So I thought, I don't know about going to that. At the same time, I was working with colleagues in Bremen on a grant, and I'd been working on that for about 3 years at that point, with a wonderful colleague there, Professor Anna Katharina Hornage.
From ZMT?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
and she now works for the DIE in Bonn, the Development Institute in Bonn. She's the director of their institute.
Okay.
And so, so I'd been working, so I had colleagues in this region. I then got approached for this symposium, and I was kind of tired and I was sort of worn out. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I can make this event, but I thought, well, it sounds kind of interesting. And so I sort of ummed and ahed a little bit. And then I thought, well, it is the end of the term and this sounds interesting. So I'll go. And cut a very long and slightly boring, sorry everyone, story short.
I like it.
I came to the symposium and I had a really wonderful time.
Yeah?
It was academically fascinating. The people were lovely. And I got a sense that something special was happening.
Right.
And that was my impression. And I remember flying home from Bremen Airport and thinking, God, I'm so glad I went. I'm so glad I went. That was really great. I met some really nice people. And I met some people that widened my circle because I was meeting people who were interested in the ocean, but from different disciplinary perspectives. And, I hang out with a lot of geographers. I like geographers. I'm a geographer. But it was really nice to meet people who made me think about the research that I do and made me think about it in a different way. So yeah, and then I think a little while after that, a couple of years after that, obviously I sort of saw that they were advertising a job, and I ummed and ahed about it because I thought there's no way I'm going to get it. So, and then I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to get it. I may as well apply.
But even after they've invited you to the symposium, you still thought you had no chance? Or?
I think the symposium was more about launching the institute. I didn't know if it wasn't necessarily about finding people.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I think it was more about letting people know that this thing was coming into being. This exciting new institute was out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I saw the job advert, I was like, okay, I'll put an application in. And I'll be honest, I didn't in a million years. I thought my research and my interests were a bit too removed. But I thought it's too good an opportunity not to apply for, because one, it's a fantastic job, but I was more interested. I don't wish this to sound, and I hope it doesn't, I know that titles and things are important to people, but I knew it was the right job because I wasn't interested in that. I wasn't interested in being at the peak of my career or the top of the tree or the hierarchy. I was interested in having more of the conversations that I'd had. I was interested in what the Institute seemed to be doing, which was different. And that was what the appeal was. Sweet. And it was as simple as that. And so, yeah. And then again, luck, I got the job. So, every day I wake up and I go, oh God, one, I hope I can do it. And two, I feel really lucky. I'm really fortunate. And so I think a lot of what I want to do with that job is to help other people build their careers and support their careers. And I don't always get it right. But I think it's a work in progress.
Yeah, for sure. You're doing a great job of it with me anyway.
Well, that's kind. But
thank you.
I could be faster. I'm probably a bit too slow.
No, that's fine.
But yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the institute Kim was talking about is the HIFMB. Not to give anything away.
Yeah.
I guess everybody guessed this. Okay, and now you're leading the marine governance group, and what's the vision for it?
Yeah, I mean the vision is also a work in progress, but I guess the thing that I was really interested in, lots of studies of governance are very, I guess the best way to put it is very nuts and bolts. Like, how do we take science and how do we create governance, and how do we govern what the practices and processes that relate to the management of something, so in this case the environment, and they're very kind of technical, I guess would be the word for it. And on the one hand, I'm quite interested in critical approaches to ocean governance. So how does ocean governance happen? What are the power dynamics that are involved in that? What are the logics that underscore the way we govern? Why do we govern the way we do? And why are we so set on governing in certain ways and not governing in ways that might be more efficient or effective or better, depending on how you define any of those words? So on the one hand, it was wanting to take that kind of more critical approach. On the other hand, as a geographer, governance doesn't just happen anywhere, it happens somewhere. And that spatial aspect, that geographical aspect is really important to me. And I think it's also important, to marine social sciences and to governance studies that sometimes treat governance as though it's somehow abstracted from the geography in which it takes place. So in terms of the group, I guess there's 3 visions really. One, it's to produce critical science on ocean governance. The second one is spatialized approaches to understanding governance. And then the third thing that I really want to do with the group is create a caring space to work, a supportive space to work.
Yeah.
And that actually is probably one of the most important things.
Oh, yes.
And I think that also echoes, I think, what we're trying to do as an institute as a whole. I think my introduction here, the colleagues who I first worked with here, have been just amazing. And I've been really lucky in my career. Everywhere I've worked, there have been nice people.
Yeah.
But it's a very sort of special collective here. And I think sort of building that group in a way where we're a kind of reflective group of people, where we support each other, where we're caring, where we kind of, look after one another, I think is an important thing, not least in the days and times that we live in.
Yes, for sure. We'll do our best of that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you will.
It's a great group. I mean, the group is made by the people in it. So that's the other thing that I've got all these visions now. The other vision, I think, is, sorry, I'm just going to carry on. Well, the other vision is a kind of flatness to the group as well. Like, I don't see myself as the person who leads it. The group is made by the people who are in it.
Yeah.
They make it. And so, lots of people say, oh, Kim, there's a nice atmosphere. But the atmosphere is made by the people in it. I don't make it. The people who are in it make it. And then I feel so privileged to have the opportunity to work with great people.
They are super interesting.
So,
the marine governance group is super interesting.
Yeah.
The people in it. Amazing.
Yeah, so we've just really nice people and doing really great science.
Yes.
Yeah.
For
You
more
included.
Yeah, thank you. More science to come. More interesting science. All right, so we're at the 40-minute mark, slightly over it even. Is there anything we've missed? Anything you still want to get out there?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah.
It's been lovely talking to you.
Thank you for coming.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's been a
So
real pleasure.
same, likewise.
So good to chat. And I wish you the best with this series, because I think it's a really great initiative
Thank
for
you.
sharing more of that sort of special atmosphere that we've
Yes.
been talking about that is here.
Yeah, hopefully we get it across.
HIFMB.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Want to dive deeper? Surf over to hifmb.de or follow us on Twitter at hifmb_OL.